Hello, I'm Frost. So we recently found out that the Alliance Tournament is returning, and I got the opportunity to talk to a CCP dev directly involved with this, that's CCP Aurora, and we had a 30-minute conversation, and well, here it comes. Hello, hi, CCP Aurora. Thank you very much for coming on, and we're going to be talking about Alliance Tournament. Super excited about it.
Awesome. Thank you for having me. Alliance Tournament is definitely one of my favorite topics to talk about.
Okay, all right. Well, obviously, I mean, a lot of my viewers are kind of nullsec people and stuff, and they're very familiar with the Alliance Tournament, but I don't believe it's all of my viewers. So should we spend just a couple of minutes with you telling us what the Alliance Tournament is about?
Yeah, so the Alliance Tournament was a big historical tournament that CCP ran for many years. It is a 10v10 tournament with quite a few pilots, 64. The format's changed a little bit over the years, but 10v10 tournament where pilots can get teleported into the special arena. They have matches to showcase their skills and kind of represent their alliance. And every ship costs a certain number of points. So there's this kind of complicated point system. For example, this battleship might cost 20 points, whereas this frigate would cost 2 points. And as you kill ships on the enemy side, you earn those points to yourself. So each team has a maximum of 100 points they can build their comp out of, which you generally want to use all of them. And it's all about destroying your enemy before they destroy you. Very, very Eve-esque in that regard. But it is a very balanced fight as well. And all of this happens on Tranquility for the official Alliance Tournament. So all of the ships that are being brought are real ships from the game, which means that the alliances need to figure out how to afford them, which can get pretty crazy when it comes to like the more expensive flagships and that sort of thing. So there's some big kills being generated as well. In all, it's just a super fun event.
Okay, brilliant. All right, so one of the first things obviously is the AT ran for like a number of years consecutively, and then it was in 2019, 13th of February 2019, CCP Falcon, who was a community dev back then, suddenly announced, AT's on hold. What was the reason behind that? What was the core reason for stopping that?
So I came in after this had happened, so I wasn't there to hear the original reasons, but in my goal of trying to bring the tournament back, I had to go back and try to figure out what had happened internally. At that point in time, there was a reorganization that had happened. There were a couple members who were the ones who were primarily maintaining the tournament tool who were no longer with CCP. CCP Logibro in particular is the one that a lot of tournament people recognize. And there was just sort of a resource allocation situation that was happening where CCP had moved a lot of stuff around and just didn't have the bandwidth to figure out how to allocate for the Alliance Tournament at the same time as they were making sure that everything else was set up. So there was kind of a lot of things happening. There was also just a lot of pressure from development time in terms of the tournament with the way that it was being run previously. And so that kind of all contributed to, we can't do this right now. Let us find a way to stabilize, figure out how to do this going forward. And that's where I came in about a year ago. I kind of picked up the pieces from there and started trying to figure out how we can make this work in the company as it is now. And a year later, I've made it. So.
Okay, so that naturally brings us on to kind of the next question, what got fixed. So basically, you were the fix. It needed someone to be there for like a year and plow time into it and commitment into it, yeah?
Yeah. So what happened was when I came into the company, I was previously an Alliance Tournament pilot, and being on the community team, the Alliance Tournament is a community event, so we have some jurisdiction over being able to run it. And I just needed to figure out how to make all of the technical backend work. So I spent a bunch of extra time just kind of working on things to see if I can figure out how everything works. A lot of it was personal curiosity. I'm just a very curious person. Like, how does all of this work? And I got a really cool look into like how development works in the back end through this process. But I basically found all of these old scripts and code and started brushing them off to try and figure out, okay, so this piece does this, but this only works under these circumstances. And I slowly figured out how things worked. I figured out how to get Thunderdome working for tournaments. And then the first time that I deployed it was the 5v5 tournament that was being held. They were originally being held on Singularity, but they wanted to hold a more official event. And so I deployed Thunderdome for that, as well as the tournament tool. And that went really well. And so we started supporting more events throughout the year. And that has slowly built up to the point where I think I'm effectively just about at where, the technical level that those who came before me were at previously. So that is kind of the process by which the tournament slowly came back.
Okay, so you mentioned there other events. So what are those other events, and how does Alliance Tournament tie in with those? Because we now have player-based events. So is AT competing against those? Is it working with them? Are you working with the same teams?
It's very much working with them. So the Alliance Open that was held by EVNT last fall was very much a stand-in for the Alliance Tournament. EVNT had actually approached us and basically asked us, can we run the Alliance Tournament for you? Which we weren't quite willing to hand over the full name yet, as you're still working on stuff in the background, but we helped them organize the Alliance Open, which was a very similar event to this coming Alliance Tournament. They tried to stick to the classic tournament format really well, and they put on a fantastic event. And it was also the first real stress test that I've had of the tools and stuff in the back end. So I was kind of lurking with their referees through a lot of that, making sure that all of the tools were functioning and the server wasn't going to crash or anything like that. It is surprisingly, there's a lot of technical stuff going on to make these tournaments happen in the background. So it is a little bit complicated.
Both from the point of view of the game as well as the production side.
Yeah, absolutely.
The
production's insane. It's like a professional studio. After the Alliance Open, there was the Anger Games, which was the next event that we supported. And the Anger Games was a 7 versus 7 tournament that was somewhat similar. They did the same sort of point value system, and they used the Alliance Tournament tools and brought people in, and it was a fantastic event. People did, that one was Sethrasil and Jerkstatiel and his crew. They put on a really wonderful event, so that was fun to see. And then after that, we had are going to have this August, there is an Australian and Chinese time zone event for those players who have trouble accessing the other tournaments. The Chinese players were so excited by Anger Games and Alliance Open this past year that they wanted to do their own thing, which is super cool. So I'm currently helping. Yep, I've just gotten them set up with Thunderdome, and they're currently in there practicing right now.
So you're preparing for Alliance Tournament, and also you're actually running a live event at the moment as well. So you're pretty busy.
I am pretty busy, and that's just the tournament side. This is only a small part of the work that I do on a daily basis. So it's definitely taken up a decent chunk of my time. But I do other things. The EVE Academy videos that you've seen recently, I wrote the scripts for most of those videos, for example. So.
Okay, busy. So you mentioned EVNT. So are EVNT involved with Alliance Tournament? Because obviously they have kind of a very good front end in terms of presenters and the crew and everything. So are you working with them? Is that kind of one of the things that helped bring AT back?
Yes, very much so. EVNT is a really fantastic crew. They're very professional to work with, and they know the Alliance Tournament really well. It would be really hard to have a desk of experienced casters if it weren't for EVNT. We would have to be kind of sorting out a lot of that ourselves. And ArtJ is just he's a good producer. He's great with esports in general, and he helps to keep the show running. So, yep, we are officially working with EVNT for the Alliance Tournament. We're going to be flying a number of their crew out here to Reykjavik to work in our new studio, which is going to be pretty fun. It'll be really cool to work with those guys in person. and to help put on the event. And it's actually it's going to be pretty busy. So we've got like the little control booth in production overlooking the studio room behind like a glass screen. And then outside of the studio room, we'll have like several other battle stations where like the referees are doing their work and the camera people are doing their work. And it's all going to the studio and being mixed appropriately. And I'll be kind of running around just overseeing the whole process. So
that's good to hear, because I mean, just knowing that you got this kind of dedicated setup of this studio with all these facilities and these rooms, shows a good sign for kind of the ongoing life of the Alliance tournament. If you're putting that kind of commitment into it, that's obviously a very good sign. Now, one of the things I need to touch on, which is it's kind of one of those weird topics, that whenever something is announced in EVE, there's a lot of people that sort of turn around and go, oh yeah, but, and obviously one of the things is that has come up on the questions is, well, there's all these things that need fixing in EVE that we've been talking about for years, and how come you're putting resources into Alliance tournament and it's like only a small portion of people that are actually involved in that in terms of playing the game? What's your answer to that?
So in terms of resources that are allocated to it, in effect, when it comes to development resources, there aren't too many. The official development resources, the biggest development ask of Alliance Tournament is with regards to prize ships, and that's mostly on the art team. So there's a lot of requests that go on to art. In terms of actual game development and all of the server stuff, we do have some help, but a lot of that is the PX. Like GMs have programmers who work on some GM tools. They're giving me a little bit of assistance now, and a lot of it's just me. So I'm the one who's doing all the code in the back end. And given that I'm a community dev and I wasn't hired to do programming, that means that we're not actually using any resources that are going to the game proper.
This is your job. Yeah, you're applying your resources in the right area.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So, I mean, obviously, you mentioned something there which actually comes up with one of the things I saw on the announcement, which is the prize ships. So you said, it puts a strain on the art department, having to create these unique art ships. So that's why you're going to go into kind of a rollover system with the Alliance tourney ships now, the prize ships?
Yeah. So that was a more complicated one. So this goes back to the discussion of when I first started looking into why the tournament was put on hiatus previously. This was one of the reasons. So there, with that, everything kind of being mixed up at CCP at that point in time, and resources were moving around, it was really difficult to get requests for additional things such as Alliance tournament ships, and that was just kind of another one of potential blockers that was making it difficult to put the event on at that point in time. And so what I wanted to do with this rule change is basically set myself up with a really solid foundation. So even when development time is at an absolute premium, and I may or may not be able to make a, please build me a brand new Alliance tournament ship request, I can always go to the art team or I can always just, we can go to this rollback plan, and we start pulling ships from the past. So the ships that we're pulling from the past are over 10 years old. So we want to maintain that like really special value. So they haven't been released for more than a decade, which means if you've been playing EVE, you might see going forward a ship re-released maybe 2 or 3 more times in a lifetime. Decade's pretty long. And I hope that it goes on that long. Obviously, the Alliance tournament is super fun.
Okay.
Yeah, so it was all just a method for me to make sure that I had a really solid foundation. Regardless of
because obviously the ships as well. It's not just the artwork of doing a new ship. It's also the maintenance, right? Because then you've got, whenever you do a balance pass, you then have to then also include all the special edition ships. And so the more that you add, then obviously the more that creates extra work there as well, right?
A little bit. So that's
Yeah.
In the past, those special edition ships generally weren't getting touched with balance passes.
Yeah.
The owners of those ships will attest to the fact that they didn't get the hack buffs or whatever it was that their particular ship would have gotten.
Yeah.
What we are looking to do, however, because we're going to start bringing these back, is now that we have a more narrow pool, we know it's not going to be expanding quite as fast. It's actually easier for us to go back and balance these ships. So we can go back and slowly touch up each ship as we go. And then we also have the option, we were looking to do like a big broad balance pass, but we also have the option of just giving new bonuses to the ships we re-release. That's not incredibly hard. It's something that we're considering. So in effect, even though it would use the same hull, it would be like a Cambion AT22 edition or whatever it would be.
Yeah.
And it might have different bonuses than the regular Cambion. So we don't know for sure if we're going to go this route, but it is, that sort of thing is an option to us.
Okay, all right. So I think we've kind of covered, where AT is going and where it's come from and stuff. So now I think we should dive into a little bit into this AT17 and some of the rules. So can you explain to me what a cascading blind system is?
Yeah, so during the Alliance Open, I was chatting with ArtJ of EventT, and they were talking about doing a blind ban system, which was like each team would submit 3 ships to ban, and then that would, like, those ships that they named would be banned. My concern, and as I was discussing with this with them, I was like, well, if they all pick the same 3 ships, that's only 3 ships banned, and that means that there might be like less diversity in the bans. So we don't want people to be afraid to ban like those particular ships that they feel are overpowered. So like if both teams ban the Balgorn, they don't kind of lose out on an additional ban. So the idea was that it would cascade, which means that if both ships submit their blind bans, so right. I ban these 3 ships, they ban these 3 ships, and 2 of them match, each team gets an additional 2 bans to make. And so it cascades. If they match up again, we stop at that point. But that means that instead of having a minimum of 3, you actually have between 6 and 9 bans, depending on how that plays out.
That's going to change comps a lot, right? That's going to create major panic in the teams with like that many bans on. It can have such an influence because you're not just like killing Logi or just killing newts. You're potentially taking newts and Logi out at the same time, and it completely remaps the whole situation. Which
is one of my favorite things, because by making it by adding in more bans, you make the system more complicated, because you can less rely on knowing exactly what ship you'll be able to bring, and so it adds an extra level of learning how to make do with the ships that are still available to you, instead of just bringing your second strongest comp if your first one got banned out.
Yeah. So you're no longer just flying a doctrine, you're literally flying by the seat of your pants. It's like, okay, we just got to cobble this together and hope for the best, and then it comes down to on the spot FCing and teamwork, I assume. Yeah. Okay, right. That kind of clears it up. Then the other thing that came in, which is obviously a new term for the Alliance Tournament, is mercenary. So what are mercenaries?
So we wanted to add a little bit of flexibility with the Mercenary Rule. So this was a rule that I had been thinking about for a little while, particularly because of the Anger Games. During the Anger Games, we saw, for example, an Imperium team that did really well. It was a combination of Init and Goonswarm, and they did fantastically. They went really far, and I thought that was great, that they were able to put together a team that was joint. And we also saw groups that were NPSI groups that have historically had a kind of weird time trying to get into the Alliance Tournament, but they hold the same sort of prestige as an alliance. So these would be NPSI
they have the same presence, like Spectre Fleet, people like that, Bomber Spar.
Spectre Fleet and Bomber Spar come to mind. Red versus Blue is kind of a split one. So the Mercenary Rule is effectively a way by which we allow alliances to bring additional people who aren't necessarily in their alliance in to fly under their flag. So, for example, the Goonswarm team could bring in initiative and be like, hey, fly under our flag as mercenaries. Or Spectre Fleet doesn't have to try and force everybody into an alliance in order to join. They can use mercenaries as part of their roster so that it's less disruptive to all of their various members. And it just kind of makes a smoother path of entry for these more dynamic groups. It also opens the door for teams to be like, hey, you're really good and we want to win the Alliance Tournament this year, so we'll pay you to do well, which is the most Eve thing ever. So we thought that was awesome.
Yeah, that I could see that, the all-star team, right? Where money was no object. Yeah, that would be interesting. That would be interesting to see if that actually happens. Okay, and then we're going to talk about some sort of detailed things, but it seems quite important, like the point value for individual ships. That's surely a big headache, right? I mean, rather than just from classes of ships.
It's the players who do the Alliance tournament. It's not a thing that you're necessarily doing like on the spot, unless you're like having to rebuild a new comp right before the match, in which case you maybe haven't prepared quite well enough. Generally, what teams do is they'll make their own comp sheets. And if there's any new teams that are listening to this that haven't done the Alliance tournament before, this is something that you very much want to do. Is you'll use a comp creator and just start making a whole bunch of comps, and then you want to be like, if these things are banned out, this comp will not work, and if these things are banned out, these are the things that will swap in. And so you just have this really big dynamic list so that you're not doing all of this stuff last minute. The theory crafters, they'll love this. It definitely makes things really interesting. But what this really allows us to do with where we're pulling out ships to be like, you know what, the Gila is just too strong for its class, we're going to make it cost extra points or something like that, which I think a lot of people might agree with on that particular one. We elevate it so that there's more interesting choices. So there's a whole lot of other ships that a particularly strong ship might be suppressing in its point category. And so all of a sudden you get much more interesting choices. Like maybe we would see more Ashimus if it wasn't for the Gila just being too strong of a choice. We probably won't see a whole lot of Ashimus, but I do love that ship. It's my favorite ship. Anyway.
I like the Orthrus. There you go. That's my favorite ship. We all have our favorite ships.
Right? This is a Mordu's Legion sponsored tournament.
Yeah.
So all of the Mordu's Legion ships are discounted, and they're really cheap. We're going to be seeing a lot of pancakes, and it will be glorious.
Yeah. Brilliant. So who's actually working out all of these numbers for these ships then? Is that you, or is it a team of people? How you kind of come up with this list of scores for each individual ship?
It is a team of me and CCP Swift.
Okay.
I've been busy doing other things. CCP Swift has had a little bit more input on these specific rules. We've definitely had quite a few conversations where I'm like, this feels like it could be low. What about doing this? What about doing this? And then we'll kind of do a bunch of theory crafting and see what we can figure out. I can't talk about the specific changes that we've made, obviously, because those are yet to be announced on Monday. Yeah. Which by the time this airs, they might be live.
Yeah, they'll be live by then. Yeah, I'm going to be airing on Thursday, the 22nd.
Okay, so
you don't have to tell me. People can look it up. That's fine.
The rules.
So so obviously there's changes to flagships as well. So I assume that's the same scenario there. That's something that you're going to announce, on the Monday of the 19th, right?
Correct. That flagship rules will be announced on Monday. Historically, flagships have been very much there's always been one obvious choice. The obvious choice is the Balgorn, or the obvious choice is the Leshak. And so we're trying to put the flagship rules in such a place that there is more interesting choices, and we'll see a bit more variety in flagships. And I think that we've got it to a place where that will happen. So the flagship numbers will be really interesting to see this year. Okay,
and one thing I saw as well, which I think is a big thing, and I can see why you've done this, is no more 80 ships allowed in the tournament. So that I presume is to help new groups be able to come in and not to be completely up against ships that they just don't have at their disposal, right?
Yeah, it's very much for the good of the competition. It was that one's a really tough choice for us to make, and I fretted over this one for a really long time. But it's really cool seeing Alliance Tournament ships die. But at the same time, there's this very heavy advantage for those ships that have an Etana or a Rabisu at their disposal. To just have such an extreme advantage. So either you have to waste one of your bans on a ship that they may or may not bring in order to ban out the Etana or Rabisu, if that's a concern for you. Whereas if you don't have that at your disposal, they know it, And so they have a clear advantage just in the pick and ban system, and then those ships are just really strong in the tournament. So if they actually bring them, it's something that you can't necessarily answer as easily. At the same time, having a chance to shoot one is really cool. So this was very much for, we know there's a lot of new teams coming in, and we want them to have and feel like they have a very even playing ground to show their stuff on.
Yeah. So where are people going to kill that? Where are people going to let their AT ships die now? That's the question, right? They're going to have to Tranquility. Yeah, they're just going to have to undock it, right, and just fly it around TQ. Okay.
And Van Hol will be very happy.
Brilliant. All right. So we kind of covered on some of the rules, and obviously, like you said, on Monday the 19th, a lot of stuff will be clarified. Obviously, the one thing this year as well, which I noticed, which I think is going to be a big help, is you've got a Discord, right? It's dedicated to the Alliance Tournament. So people will be able to come on there and ask questions about the rules, etc. Yeah?
Absolutely. So I am super active in there, just kind of answering questions constantly. And I'm sure that when Monday comes, we're going to get just an absolute insane barrage of questions. That will be really exciting. But yeah, so the Discord server is something that was done for the Alliance Open and Anger Games, and it was just a really easy way for all of those teams to stay in touch and to give small updates. Like in the past with the Alliance Tournament, it was, you had to have the forums, which not everybody was on all the time, and so it was kind of hard to disseminate updates that were like not newsworthy. So you kind of only had like news or forum posts. We'll still be using the forums for this tournament, but the Discord gives us just a really easy way. Like if I need to send a reminder to captains, like, hey, reminder, this deadline's coming up, I can just ping it up to the Discord and boom, everybody's got it.
Yeah. So, yeah. Also, I imagine it's also going to help teams to find other teams to practice against and stuff like that, right? I mean, it's not just for you to communicate. This allows the teams to communicate between each other as well, potentially.
Yep. Exactly that. So it allows the teams to communicate, and there's a looking for team channel in the Alliance Tournament Discord. So for those pilots who would really like to join a team, or those teams that are trying to fill out their roster because they don't have quite enough pilots, or maybe they're looking for somebody like a mercenary who's actually like really good who can help their team along, they can hop into the looking for team channel and advertise themselves. And there's been a ton of advertisements. It's actually really cool to see all of the people who are like, I'd really like to take part in this event. Here's my bio.
Brilliant. Because one of the things I've always loved about AT are the ads. The ads from the teams themselves. Like the Camel Empire ones have always been my favorite, just because they're so random. So hopefully we'll see plenty of those coming up as well.
They've always been a favorite of mine too. So those will absolutely be involved or brought back.
Yeah. Okay. So sign up dates. So obviously we've talked about Monday the 19th already quite a few times. So that's when it all starts. So what can you give us a quick little rundown of the dates, even though they're kind of on the website, just so they're included here. So the first sign up is period is like 19th to the August, is it? Yep.
By the time this video airs, signups will have opened and the rules will be published. Players have until the August 16th to sign up, and that is when signups close. The signup does need to be done by the Alliance Executor. So you can't just sign up your team on your own if you're hoping to run one. You need the Alliance Executor to sign you up, because it's like saying, I agree to have this team represent us to fly our flag in the tournament. And then after signups closed, on August 23rd is roster lock. So that's when you need to be in your alliance, and when the mercenaries need to be declared for the teams. So that'll happen on August 23rd. And after that point, I'll be able to grant Thunderdome access.
Okay.
And then,
go ahead.
And then shortly thereafter, on September 4th and 5th, that is when we're looking to have our feeder event. It's looking like we're going to have a pretty good turnout this year, so there's going to be quite a lot of battles that'll happen on September 4th and 5th. And those will happen on Thunderdome. So if a team is going to the feeder rounds, they will need to be ready for that. Then we'll be having, through September and October, there will be open practices that we'll broadcast, and we'll post announcements in the Alliance Tournament Discord as we kind of look for teams to partake in those. And so we can just kind of show off like what the tournament is kind of looking like and how the teams are preparing. That'll be really fun. And then on October 15th is where we lock in flagships. So that's the point at which we need to know what flagship the team has decided to bring, and then we'll publish those so that everybody knows what teams have which flagships. And then the first weekend is November 6th and 7th. And then the second weekend is November 13th and 14th.
Okay, nice. So people will have at least about a week, I think, or so to recover from Eve Vegas before they have to go into the Alliance Tournament, right?
Barely enough time for Eve Vegas, but I think they'll manage.
Yeah, they'll manage. Okay, so let's talk about, but for you personally, what does AT17 mean to you, and where do you hope it's going to go, and where do you hope it's going to go in the future as well?
Yeah, so I was a big Alliance Tournament fan before I came to work at CCP. I was actually the Alliance Tournament captain for the Brave team in Alliance Tournament XVII, and I also led them during the Streamfleet Showdown event, which had come shortly after that. And I'm just super, super excited to be able to help make these events happen again. They were, you put a lot of sweat into these tournaments, and there's a ton of dedication. You're practicing multiple times a week, and even when you're not practicing, you're spending time building team compositions, and just trying to give yourself every edge you can. And then who knows, you could spend all that time and then get just knocked out of the tournament in the first 2 rounds, and that would be devastating. But that is the reality for at least a quarter of the participants, is that they just don't win a match.
It's a serious business though. I mean, people don't realize just how much time a lot of AT pilots put into the tournament in terms of preparation and practice and stuff.
Yeah, it's just a super meaningful thing. And that it very much has like the really lows of defeat and the highs of like victory. There's nothing better than putting in all of this time and this dedication and actually feeling and watching it pay off. And you win a match and you're like, best feeling in the world. And the more people I can help share that with, the better. Also, it's just a really fun way for people to cheer on their alliances. I know that, even when I wasn't actually on the Alliance Tournament team before I started doing that, I was in Brave, and I loved to watch the Brave Alliance Tournament team, and I would cheer them on for every match. It was a very communal event. We would have like a little watch party, and everybody would be, rooting for the team, talking about it over comms as we watched it, and super fun. It's just like any big sporting event, at least for the dedicated EVE players.
So I think the thing to wrap up with at this stage then is this: long live the AT, right?
Long live the AT.
All right. Okay. Is there anything else that you want to add, or do you think we've kind of covered everything for today?
I think that's everything. By the time this video airs, signups will be open. So if you are on the fence, I would strongly urge you to try to put together a team, convince your Alliance executor to sign you up, because the more the merrier, and it is probably one of the coolest experiences you will have in terms of EVE play and just kind of putting in a ton of work with good friends. It is really amazing.
All right. Well, CCP Aurora, thank you very much for coming on. Hopefully maybe we can catch up in a month or two when we get a little bit closer to the date and just kind of do an update. That would be really cool.
Yeah,
but I think this has given a really good view of the Alliance Tournament. I appreciate you taking the time.
Thank you for having me.
All right, thanks. Bye. And that wraps up this interview. So a big thank you to CCP Aurora for taking the time to come on and talk about Alliance Tournament in depth and to give us some really good answers to my questions. I hope you found that useful. I hope you found that interesting. As always, please be sure to like, subscribe, hit the bell icon for notifications, mention me in your Corp Discord, Alliance Discords, and also, do pop into the comments and let me know your thoughts about the Alliance Tournament, about a lot of the things that CCP Aurora said, and your thoughts on it. I'll be really, really interested to read up on it. And hopefully we'll get a chance to catch up with CCP Aurora a little bit closer to kind of the 2 weekends where we have the final matches. All right, so that's going to be all from me for this one. And hopefully we'll do another CCP Dev Chat in the future. All right, thanks a lot. Bye.